Greetings, friends. Reformed Stoic, back again with another video. I got the door closed this time. Hopefully that helps drown out the dryer noise. Got some laundry rolling. Hopefully the cats don't scratch at the door, but we'll just see what happens there. So this is a topic that on some level contains essence of topics that have been beaten to death. But I'm making this video because maybe it hasn't been organized in exactly this fashion, and even if it has been, maybe some of the commentary that I'll come up with in this video hasn't exactly been voiced in this way that I'm going to voice it. As always, no script, off the top, free flow, free thoughts. Monogamy is what built the West, and hypergamy, it is going to be its downfall. So I wanted to start with some thoughts on Christianity in the West, and I'm going to try to make this brief. In my last few videos that haven't made it to the channel, anytime the topic of the Bible or Christianity comes up, I go on this kind of like autistic rant, and I watch it back, and I'm just like, man, things are just all over the place lately because I'm not exactly sure where my faith is at, but we're not going to touch into that because that's when the videos don't make it to the channel. But I was trying to be completely unbiased and think, what is it about Christianity that made the West thrive? And in an unbiased fashion, what I came up with is that it's monogamy. And I think, briefly outlining this point, maybe people who are atheists or other religions, they could understand how that's the case. Because, you know, there's all these Christian West people that are like, oh, well, Christianity was chosen by God. It's the one true faith. This is why, you know, God favored the West. And I'm not saying I don't believe that. I'm not saying I do or don't believe that right here, right now for this video. I'm just saying that monogamy in Christianity, it gave average men an incentive to contribute to society. And, you know, I wasn't there in these earlier times, but I genuinely believe that society felt like camaraderie. It felt like a real community. Real community existed in ways that some people are still experiencing community. I'm most certainly not, and a lot of men most certainly are not experiencing community. And, you know, the response to that is usually like, oh, well, it's your job to go join a community. Like, you're supposed to go find community in a meetup group or join in a church, and we'll get to that later. But the Bible tells you that sex outside of marriage is a sin. Fornication is a sin. This is what the church is taught. And marriage is permanent. This is what the Catholics taught. There's the story of, King Henry the Eighth? I think it's King Henry the Eighth or the Seventh. I think it's the Eighth. He converted to Protestantism because he wanted to get a divorce, and that is basically what resulted in England becoming Protestant. And I did want to give some credit to Protestants for the West becoming what it ultimately became, because you had the Protestant work ethic. Now, what would be the summary here? Well, Protestants have basically extracted some of the spirituality from Catholicism. Not saying this is good or bad here right now. I have my own thoughts on this, but for the purpose of this video, I'm trying to get through this train of thought in a way that everybody can more or less get on board with, regardless of what you think about Christianity or different denominations of Christianity. The Protestant work ethic was a result of getting rid of this kind of monastery mentality, getting rid of this more theological, spiritual mentality, getting rid of some of the stigma about money and wealth, and just having a more refined Christianity that's like, look, you don't really need to jump through all of these hoops to get saved, so you can spend less time thinking about what it takes to get saved, less time worrying about your salvation. You get saved through faith in Jesus Christ. That's taken care of. You're here, you're at church, you know that you're saved. Yay, we're all saved. That's taken care of. Let's go to work. Let's focus on other things. In a nutshell, that is what made the Protestant United States, Protestant English Empire, what it was. That's what really made the West what it was. And yeah, the family values and such was already there in the Catholic Church, and I'm not necessarily saying that Protestant society was superior to Catholic society, but pulling the Band-Aid, you know, when we're talking about England and then later the United States, these are very white nations. So I don't want to get in trouble, but yeah, you know, a lot of white people who are Protestants, the more refined Christianity, less time worrying about rituals, less time worrying about pleasing God. But I mean, these people were more wary of pleasing God, like exponentially so, than people now. Overall. I mean, there's still holy people now. There's still people who live very faith-based lives, but Pandora's box has been open for a long time now, and we're going to get to that. But what you have in the Protestant United States and England, the Western Protestant, primarily white, pre-multiculturalism world, is people who are working hard, less time worrying about spiritual things, more time being productive, creating the Protestant work ethic. You combine the Protestant work ethic with the Industrial Revolution, and this is like hyperbole. This is kind of like a really negative thing that I don't necessarily believe, but just something that should be said as an example. You have a nation of people who are kind of tricked into being slaves. And in terms of like the elite and the Freemasons and the secret societies and all that, I mean, you could potentially look at it that way. But these people were maybe pretty happy, you know, because they were able to get married and have a family. The man worked hard. He came home to a house with a homemaking wife and children that more or less he had dominion over, which, you know, I'm not saying like there were no men who were horrible to their families, but that isn't like automatically like a horrible thing for a man to be in charge of the household. Just, you know, I recently, a couple months ago, watched the John Adams miniseries, you know, because I am a descendant of John Adams from my mother's side of the family. And just things like, you know, him basically deciding what his kids were going to do, choosing what schools his children went to. He had one son that was somewhat of a failure and was abusive to his wife and was an alcoholic and a drunkard and made a fool of himself. And then he had another son who was John Quincy Adams, who went on to follow in his footsteps and also become a president. But regardless of that, him having dominion of the household just means he has a vision for his kids, and if you're a well-to-do man, then you want your kids to follow in your footsteps. Yada, 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 yada. You get my point. Like, the point is that the man had dominion of the family, and that wasn't really a horrible thing. It's interesting when you look at this idea that men shouldn't be in charge of the family. It's like each and every family unit used to be more of a monarchy where the man was king, and now every family unit is more of like a libertarianism or a democracy, and I don't think it functions as well. Now, personally, in my personal views, because this is what happens when you're enlightened. I mean, you think of like the term the Enlightenment, and people in my spheres, myself, have been very critical of the Enlightenment, but I've been understanding the perspective for at least the last year that when you, the individual, become more so enlightened, you don't want to be ruled over by a king. You don't really want to be told what to do. On one hand, I understand the importance and the benefit of authority. On the other hand, I understand the corruption that comes with authority most of the time, and the desire to be free. And it's what really made me take a look at the United States, and it was fascinating. I highly recommend the John Adams miniseries. I mean, it's got like an 8.5 on IMDb. It has amazing actors. I'm not remembering the name of the guy who played John Adams, but he's the guy from like Big Fat Liar. He's the guy from Sideways about wine. Paul Giamatti, yeah, great actor, great miniseries. But you look at the way things were run in the early United States. Ultimately, the United States was a republic that eventually became more of a democracy. Some people say it's not really a democracy. And then you have people saying, oh, it's fascism, it's an oligarchy. Well, a lot of those things go hand in hand with a democracy, because if you look at like what Aristotle and Plato say about democracy was not spoken of as a positive thing in philosophy. And it's really funny, because then you hear the presidents, we're losing our democracy. This idea that democracy is the end-all be-all of everything, it just really shows like how far we've slid. But yeah, the original vision of the Founding Fathers was a republic, and it was more about like wealthy property owners having a say in the country. And these are just people were overall more educated. And it's funny because it's a result of like not having iPads and not having iPhones, but also a pre-industrial revolution society initially, because what we have with the Industrial Revolution is the population just absolutely overflowing. And it didn't really amount to anything, it amounted to more bodies to fill the factories for more production. But what are people producing? Like, what's the big picture? What is the bottom line of all this production? Well, it's for the elite. It's for the few. The Industrial Revolution created a world where there are the factories filled with people who, they can work these menial jobs, but they don't know how to create a factory. They don't know how to they don't know how to manage the factory behind the scenes. That's ultimately the world of the elite, is the few who control the factories and then the many that fill the factories. So, that's a little bit of background on, what I may or may not understand about the origins of the United States, Protestantism versus Catholicism, the West. Things looked good near the beginning of the United States. The population here was overall well-educated, homogeneous. They all shared the same religion. Now people point at the Constitution, freedom of religion. And what does that mean now? That means Muslims and Indians and everything. Well, what it really meant back in the day was different denominations of Christianity. Like, you could be a Calvinist or you could be a Baptist. And they weren't really crazy about Catholics. You should see what John Adams said about Jesuits and Catholics. A quote that I remember off the top of my head is, "I fear for the future of this country with the Jesuits coming to our shores. However, honoring our Constitution, I honor their right to be here." Well, as much respect as I've gained for the vision of the Republic, it does seem to be a slippery slope. If there's no boot, if there's no putting your foot down, if there's no saying no, things just tend to go in a wrong direction. I think the vision of the Republic, these are what I would consider right now the most intelligent men of all time. John Adams, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. But it's interesting, when you're talking about the Illuminati, there's some talks that Thomas Jefferson might have been in the Illuminati. That would be the Illuminati connection. George Washington was very anti-Illuminati. There's all kinds of different speculation on the Illuminati. People say, oh, it was a small group. They weren't around for very long. They were disbanded. So they were gone when everybody says that they were there. But the idea is that, they went underground. And in my studies of the Illuminati, I've more or less come to understand that that's the origins of atheism. Like, atheism wasn't really a thing. Now, some people say that they were more like deists or Gnostics. Ultimately, Freemasons are deists. And I've come to an understanding that I respect early Freemasonry. Not that this is what this video is supposed to be about, but I am kind of getting the idea that once Catholicism was allowed in the United States, because it was originally Protestant, Jesuits did come to the United States, and Jesuits likely did subvert things like Freemasonry, or the Illuminati subverted Freemasonry. I believe that Freemasonry was subverted, and ultimately the original concept of Freemasonry, the deist lodges, were intelligent, well-to-do, wealthy men, talked about philosophy together, and looked at God kind of like outside of the lens of the Bible. They at least allowed those kind of discussions to happen. I don't know, but I believe that maybe wasn't always the issue, was Freemasonry in and of itself. There is reason to believe that Freemasonry could have been subverted by the Illuminati or by the Jesuits. Some people say that the Illuminati was the Jesuits. I actually have done some research and figured that's not really the case. Just because Adam Weishaupt was a Jesuit, he wrote pamphlets against the Jesuits. But anyway, I think maybe we've covered enough here. That was all a tangent off of, I think that the beginning of the United States, founding fathers, these were some of the most intelligent men of all time, and the vision of the United States from these men, the Republic and the Constitution, sticking it to the King of England, it was all great. Like, this was something very promising. It started out great, and it looked good for a good amount of time. As far as what went wrong, you look through the 1800s, and, wars, Civil War. About the time of the Civil War. Now, that's awkward to talk about because of slavery, but, North versus South. Look what Abraham Lincoln said about the Jesuits. He said that the South likely would have never started the war if it was not for the aid that was promised to them by the Catholic Church and the Jesuits. So all I'm saying is that things looked like they got pretty fishy around the Civil War. There's people talking about pictures of generals in the South giving the hidden hand. There's this idea that there was kind of a subversion going on. I guess the idea would be that it was Freemasons, but the Freemasons were working with the Jesuits. Like, the Freemasons were subverted by the Jesuits, and they betrayed people in the South. Whoever it is, the Freemasons, the Illuminati, or the Jesuits, something kind of fishy happened in the Civil War, and ultimately, the North was kind of the side that was chosen to win that conflict. Really, regardless of any of the secret societies, you look at England. That was kind of England digging its roots back into the country. First, we had the Revolutionary War breaking away from England. Things looked promising for a while. Then we had the Civil War. That was the beginning of the powers that be, the elite, whoever they may be, whatever you want to call them. They dug their claws back into the United States. And then, the rest is history. Then we have eventually communism, World War I, World War II, and then you get the post-World War II modern world. with feminism and multiculturalism and all of those kind of things. So that's a pretty good little 20-minute rant there. And I think we can go ahead and leave that at that. Monogamy, the Protestant work ethic, the more refined, let's spend a little bit less time worrying about the Bible and the rituals of Catholicism. And we love God, we love Jesus, we're saved through faith. Let's focus on our jobs. Marriage was the end-all be-all. There was not people doing what they do today. They wouldn't even be able to imagine it. There's a scene in the John Adams miniseries where John Adams and his wife are visiting France because Thomas Jefferson had connections to the French. And, the French, that's kind of about the area where the Bavarian Illuminati was operating, because some people say that the Illuminati was behind the French Revolution. But there was a moment where she was commenting on a play that she watched, and the French were much more liberal, okay? The French were much more liberal than the early United States, and the plays were very sexy. Everybody was wearing makeup, and people were kissing in the plays. And she just made some sort of a comment like, women would be much obliged to take pleasure in many things if men would allow it. And I found that very foreboding to where society has gone. So, I find that rant kind of relevant, like Christianity was a very good system of checks and balances, of morals, to make people believe that it was important to be in a monogamous relationship. Because now, closing the history book and speaking in terms that everybody is familiar with, Chad always existed. Chad always existed. And like Miss Adams, like Abigail Adams said, given the opportunity, women would be much obliged to take part in various pleasures if men would allow it. Men didn't allow it. And now we're living under this guise of equality of the sexes. I want to be careful with how I talk about these things. This video is going great so far. I'd hate to blow it right now. It's interesting when you talk about equality of the sexes. Is this allowed to be talked about? Equality of the sexes, what does that really mean? Because I think what we're starting to see in the modern equality of the sexes is that women have things that men don't. And now that these checks and balances have been taken away and these kind of cultural norms have been taken away, we're watching men just get absolutely out-competed. And I planned on bringing this up at some point in this video. I became aware of a girl's donation site. There's a bunch of them, it could either be through like Patreon, or now there's one called Buy Me a Coffee, which is another kind of Patreon. Something that's not OnlyFans. And the content isn't on the level of OnlyFans. Okay, this girl just does try-on hauls, which just means she buys outfits and she films herself trying on the outfits from kind of a naive perspective, like, hey girls, look what I'm wearing today. And 99.9% of her audience is men. I wanted to break down this girl's business model for you and how business is going for this girl, because it's very eye-opening. This girl does try-on hauls. She has no lewd content, okay? Some of the clothes are a little bit revealing, but this is not pornographic content. She has 1,500 subs, paying $10 a month. So that's $15,000 a month. Okay? So, I mean, if it was $10,000 a month, then that's $120,000 a year. But it's more than that. So, and then I get the idea that she probably sells some like extra content too. And then there's guys that are just giving her tips every now and then. This girl who's fresh out of high school, not even doing lewd content, is making probably like 300 grand plus a year for just shopping and filming herself trying on clothes. Any girl who's moderately attractive can do that. And the equivalent to that 20 years ago would be the strip club. This is a low status position that comes with like some problems, like you're going to be judged. You have to actually interact with men. Men are putting their hands on you every day. You're sitting on men's laps. Men are constantly like probably sexually harassing you and propositioning you to pay you for sex and things. There's a big difference between a girl working in a strip club and a girl spending most of her time shopping and in her bedroom making over $300,000 a year. Okay? And men are at a point where you have to like blow it out of the water in high school, get scholarships, go to a good college, get a good degree, say the right thing the entire time, and you probably still need to have some connections, and then you can get a good career. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of insight into like what I'm picking up on, because what I'm picking up on is this is going to become more popular. It's going to become more popular for women to make an OnlyFans kind of income without even doing lewd content. And there's more of a market for that because there's people coping like, oh, I just want to support because this isn't even porn. This isn't even a big deal. She's just trying on bathing suits. Okay? And it's interesting because, yeah, it's like pornography probably makes less money overall. And then OnlyFans, sometimes they do porn and that probably makes more money. And then the most famous OnlyFans girls don't even do porn. They shake their butt, but sometimes they show themselves nude. And then now there's going to be girls who just do try-on hauls, and it's not even porn. Tee-hee! And they're making $300,000 a year. And, you know, I just went to the most expensive, famous music school on the planet, and unfortunately didn't graduate. And unfortunately, I'm a fucking nobody, even though I'm pretty talented and smart. It doesn't matter. I wish I knew how to put on clothes and film it. Oh, I do, but nobody would ever pay for that. So, man, how about that first 20 minutes of the video? That was pretty educational. Now we're in Chud territory. This is where Chud meets Fancy Pants history book reading McGee. But yeah, that's the idea, guys, is that Christianity, say what you will about it. I've said many different things about it. I've had many different views on it. And for the time being, I'm keeping my current views about it to myself. But it contained monogamy. And that was the key to building society. That was the key to building Western society. I guess you could say it was white people. I know that people hate that. Like, that just hits you wrong. But why can't people be proud of their culture, you know? Like, what's wrong with people being proud of their culture? You know, black people talk about how they made all the music, and they really kind of did. You know, like rock and roll started with like boogie woogie and stuff, and then, you know. Anyway, it was a combination of like the Protestant work ethic, white people, and monogamy. And monogamy's over, and we're in a stage right now where people aren't really going to accept it. I mean, 5 years ago, MGTOW was this really fringe thing. The black pill was this really fringe thing. And it's really been fascinating watching how things have changed, because we're at a time right now where the black pill is definitely winning. Like, the black pill has won the culture war, but still normies aren't going to admit it. They're going to be like, dude, just get a job and just go to church and just do this. And what I've noticed about church, because I've gone to various churches, is that the most important thing a church could be doing right now is taking a strong stand against modernity and its flaws and how it's not in line with the Bible. Because, if Protestant society is what made the West thrive, then what's changed? Because there's still Protestant churches, right? Well, I've been in like a Baptist church where, I talked about how part of what pushed me towards becoming a Christian is realizing like, oh, wow, I got my arguments against God from Comedy Central stand-up specials and musicians. And, well, maybe musicians and stand-up comedians like aren't the best people to be learning about like the meaning of life from. And this traveling minister got really uncomfortable that I said that. He went up to the microphone after I gave my little speech. He's like, oh, what a great speech, but there's nothing wrong with music and there's nothing wrong with movies and TV. And he kind of laughed it off. Like, these modern churches are just trying to act like everything's fine. Just get a job and contribute and society's fine. Everything's great. Democracy's great and feminism is great and everything's great. There's nothing wrong with the modern world. That's a conspiracy. There's no elite. There's no evil. Everything's fine. And yeah, there are some churches that try to take a stand. Obviously, a lot of them have a presence online. But I just keep finding inconsistencies even with that, where there's usually some sort of a area where they go wrong. But there are definitely some Christian movements that at least try to take a strong stance against the modern world. But for the most part, your average church, it's going to be a lot of people who are very connected to the world. And if you're not connected to the world because of a lot of the flaws of the modern world, there's going to be a lot of people who don't understand. And they're going to point the finger at you. And it doesn't mean you didn't do anything wrong. It's just that ultimately the black pill has won the culture war. It's like things start in the mind and then they kind of like reverberate out into the real world. Let's say like in the mind of society, in like the etheric realm that reality reverberates out of, the black pill has already won the culture war. And over the next 5 to 10 years, we are going to see things. Trump's only going to be able to do so much, man. I'm hearing people say things like, oh, bro, it's the best time to be white-pilled. Like, bro, women really want to marry Trump supporters, and all the illegals are going to get deported, and we'll see what happens. I'm sure Trump's going to try to do some things, but it's like leaks, springing in a dam, and people try to cover it up with gum or something or tape, and then another leak comes. It's like playing a game of Jenga, and the tower is just so super high, and this shit's crashing, bro. Like, maybe not on a dramatic. It's just going to be a slow boil for the rest of our lifetimes. But my prediction for the next 5 to 10 years is that we've seen 5 to 10 years ago, MGTOW black pill was fringe and you got laughed at it for it. You see now that it has expanded greatly and everybody knows what it is, and some people are still laughing about it, like, ha ha ha, incels, ha ha ha, black pill, but everybody knows what it is, because it has grown rapidly. And YouTube tried to crack down on it. Like, they nuked a bunch of MGTOW channels. I've had plenty of videos get taken down for hate speech, even when I try to word things in the absolute best ways. They tried to stop it. The system knew. The philosophers of the system knew that MGTOW and everything that comes with it, all the little labels and male spaces, it was a problem for society, and they tried to crack down on it. But all you got to do is look at the direction things are going. Like, it has expanded. It has grown. And the science has started to acknowledge things. You know what one of the latest statistics is? 45% of men, it was like 16 to 25, have never approached a woman. And another statistic I remember is that 45% of women, like, are going to be single at 30 or something like that. And whenever I say these, these are statistics, you really want to remember the source. You really want to remember the name of the study, because people want to check. That's ridiculous. Like, oh, what study was that? I had an experience with that at a dinner with my family, like months ago now, like almost a year ago. A young relative of mine, he checked me. He's like, oh, and what study said that? And I was like, the Hill loneliness study. 63% of men, 19-29, are single, and only 32% of women in that same age group are single. And people are like, oh, the women are dating older guys. Like, we don't really know for a fact what exactly is happening, but a lot of men in their hearts know from their experience. Like, a lot of men are much more knowledgeable and experienced about this than people are willing to accept. Like, we all know those girls are taking turns with a very small percentage of high status, tall, high income, high status celebrity, maybe tier men. Hypergamy. Monogamy is what built the West through the vessel of Christianity, more specifically in terms of England and the United States through the vessel of Protestantism, Protestant work ethic, white people, monogamy. That's what built Western society. And hypergamy is what's going to tear it down. And people say, oh, well, these people are behind the fall. These people are behind the fall. This is who rules the world. This is who rules the world. It's women. It's hypergamy. It's feminism. That's the problem. That is 100% the problem. And people say, well, you just got to work 8 times as hard for women who slept with 80 times as many men. Like, what are these quotes? Like, you have to work 10 times as hard for a woman who's like a 10th as valuable, And this is really pushing it for what YouTube accepts. I mean, it used to be that you would basically get a wife, and then through the marriage there was the promise of the man's work ethic, and it was easier for the man to find a job because through feminism the workforce doubled overnight, benefiting the employer. And then you add in multiculturalism, so like things are a fourth as good for the employee and 4 times as good for the employer. Those aren't exact statistics, but things have just kept getting worse for the employee under the guise of, oh, feminism, freedom for women. Yeah, they doubled the workforce. It's capitalism. It's not communism. It's funny when people are making a lot of videos about how horrible communism is right now. Like, yeah, sure, no, communism's bad, but feminism is capitalism. Feminism benefits the capitalist. Multiculturalism benefits the capitalist. And it's so funny, bro, because they've called, like, this is all communism, this is cultural Marxism. Sure, but people who really know communism know that outside capitalist influences benefited from communist societies. Even communism is capitalist. I mean, the bottom line of capitalist is who has the capital? The billionaires, the elite. Feminism, equality in women and double the workforce, more selection, more employees, more profits. Oh, yeah, yeah, man, totally. Multiculturalism, bro. I love all cultures, and I love tacos, and more employees, cheaper labor. more profits. That's all it was ever about. That's all it was ever about. And all this stuff, all of this alt-right talk about, oh, these commies, and there's a communist revolution, and the elite's communist. It's all a big distraction, bro. It's the capitalist with his suit and his cigar. He's got quadruple the workforce. He's got immigrants doing cheap labor. He's got women in pantsuits. And what is it about? What is it about women in pantsuits? Like, why does the capitalist like that? Because they listen, bro. Because they listen. Because they do what they're told. Because they learn exactly by the book. They follow instructions. I would go as far as to say that maybe women follow instructions better than men. Because men do revolutions. Men realize that they're living in a shit trap. Men realize that they're being taken advantage of. Men just tend to do revolutions. Like my ancestor, John Adams, was involved in leaving behind England and establishing a new country. That's what men do. And immigrants who are just happy to be in the United States, happy to work for cheap, they don't ask questions. Women who are much more agreeable than men and just so happy to be empowered, they don't ask questions, bro. And what we have is a lot of men who are demoralized. They're struggling to be productive because they're hurting, man. A lot of men are hurting, and the churches have failed them, and their parents have failed them, and their communities are non-existent, but the community that they used to have failed them. And, oh, shame, 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 you're lazy, you don't want to do this. 5 to 10 years from now, it's going to be bad. It's going to be really bad. Men do not want to work. They see these 18-year-old girls making $350,000 a year doing try-on haul videos. Yeah, fuck this shit. I'm not doing fucking shit. That's what a lot of men are thinking, bro. And the churches, they're 501c3. They're 501c3, man. Oh, yeah, God really wants us to protect Israel because it's in the Bible. Dude. Yeah. And I'm keeping my juicy perspectives on theology to myself, at least for the time being. Because I've done some videos on it lately, and it's coming out weird, man. Because just keep on searching, man. Keep on searching. Seek and destroy. Alright, my friends. Well, that's it. Monogamy built the West, and hypergamy is what's going to tear it down. And yeah, man, like, my prediction for the next 5 to 10 years. 5 to 10 years ago, MGTOW was fringe. Oh, those guys are just losers. Right now, it's bigger than it's ever been. The statistics are coming out to the public. The public is being presented with studies, and you're getting people, oh, well, that's just a study, but I thought trust the science. Oh, but it's just a study, and oh, that's just dating apps. Like, you know, it's not real people in dating apps, but people are getting arrested for what they say on the internet. So you're saying what people do on the internet doesn't matter, only if it's a dating app? Oh, yeah. Only fucking dumbass, low IQ mouth breathers are not understanding what's happening. And that's most of the population. So 5 to 10 years from now, things are going to be bad. And I would focus on you, bro. I would focus on you. You, the individual, get your shit together. You want to get married? You want to have a family? You want to get some women? Like, figure it out for you, bro. Maybe I'm going to figure it out. Maybe you're going to figure it out. I'm talking about the masses. Because what happens in my comments is people like, oh, dude, you're not that ugly. And oh, dude, you're not... Like, people just think I'm only talking about me. No, I'm talking about fucking society, bro. And that's what society does. Like, if you acknowledge what's happening, you're the incel. You're the guy who does this. You're the guy who does that. Like, bro, this is what's fucking happening. to the masses. Masses of men have failed with women. Masses of men are demoralized. Masses of men. How many of you guys at least were aware of this in high school? All the fucking pretty girls were all taking turns banging like the fucking athletes, and the best looking guys were the baddest boys. And it's like, oh, I'll go make up for it in college. And then the girls in college are in fucking sororities and they're all fucking the frat guys. Oh, I'll just get a job. And then like your job doesn't amount to shit and you get ghosted. And women are fucking woo! The top 10% of men, the top 5% of men that are using their fucking phones, or they're just making $350,000 a year sitting in their fucking bedroom. They used to have to be on the stripper pole, but that didn't make as much money as porn. Then they're just shaking their ass on OnlyFans, but it's like they make more money for doing stuff that's less lewd, and it's like, oh, well, she's not even fucking doing anything sexual. This is a genuine career. She's not even a sex worker. She's just got 1,500 men cranking it to her doing a fucking try-on haul. Respect her freedom, Chinese! Men are saying, fuck it. I don't want to be a part of this anymore. I do not want to fucking participate in this society, and they're going to do everything they can. They're going to do everything they can to opt out. And it's like, well, how do you make money? How do you do this? How do you do that? I don't know. Some of them are going to just scrape by. Some of them are going to fucking do crime. Some of them are going to leech off of their parents. Some of them are going to leech off of the fucking system. They don't want to be a part of this fucking evil society anymore. And grab your popcorn. God bless.